I hope you guys didn't mind the dog. I could not. Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you for joining me today. Hopefully, I got everything up and running correctly on this, so bear with me here. Um, Man, thank you for taking the time to just come in and check this out. Hopefully, you guys can hear me and see me okay. If you can, do me a favor there in the comment section. Just tell me, or you can hear me and you can see me, or give me a thumbs up, or what have you. I just want to make sure you guys can see and hear okay. So this is amazing. We already have some people on. This is epic. I can't tell you enough how excited I am about today. And I hope you didn't mind that dog picture. I couldn't pass that up. I was like, how can I make this not so heavy right off the bat? And is something my buddy Jason Goldberg had taught was just how to make things playful and fun. And I thought, that's just enough of an icebreaker to come into this thing. So let's see. Hey, Deja, excellent. Got my buddy Captain Chris here. Jean-Michel from Yes, overseas. Eric Reimer. Rob Bones, Deja, Joey. Tammy Melinda, excellent. Mom. Grace, excellent. Patricia, Shannon, Miriam, yay. I love seeing all these faces here. Timbo, excellent. All right, well, just before we get started, my hope is to do this within, about an hour time frame because there's a lot to share. And so if you've got a moment, grab something to drink, your trusty favorite beverage, yay, and or some little snack on, maybe some hankies if you need them. But I'm in the hopes of sharing a journey for these past 55 days. And I was really nervous at first about doing this. If you would have asked me 55 days ago, would I have done a Facebook Live and even talk about grieving or talk the loss of my son? That would have been a resounding hell no. It just would not have happened because you just don't think about those things. So I'm going to take about one more minute and then we get started on this. I'm so excited. Yay, Miss Gloria is here. Yay. Yeah, Marianne. Awesome. I love it. Oh, I love you too, Marianne. And for you, Marianne, and also Miss Gloria, know that today, especially today, is sending out some extra love and hugs to you guys as well. So thanks for joining me. So, look at all the loves. Yay. Oh, hi, Michelle. Excellent. Captain Chris says Phil's giant tankard. Uh, Hopefully it's not with pressers because you'll be out within the next 5 minutes. Oh, thanks, Jean-Michel. Yeah, oh, and do me a favor. One of the things I'd love to see is just how far this message will reach. If you could do me a favor in the comment section, tell me where you're at, where you're listening from. I'd greatly appreciate it. So here we go. Let's do this. Oh, hi, Joanne. And I'm going to do that throughout this. I want to take just a few moments just to acknowledge people as I can see them, come in, or notes. My buddy Tony Doyle's here. I getting hit in the feels just right off the bat with the amount of love. And my buddy Jaron, oh, I am so stoked. You brother, and you know why. I'm stoked that you're here. So what today is going to be is for me to have this conversation with you, to share with you a little bit about my son, but also for me to talk about what happened 55 days ago and the couple days leading up to that for my son. And then just what I've gone through in these last 55 days, what my family has gone through. And in a little while, I plan to share some photos. Now, majority of these photos I have not seen in a long time, because what I've done for my kids, just as family as a whole, I'm one of those parents that love taking pics of my kids and their playing, and that was to include Chris, my eldest son. And I've created files on my computer where I would take some photos that really stood out and I just drag and drop and throw them in there. I was like, oh, one day I'm going to go ahead and get to use these, for a slideshow. I didn't think that the slideshow would be because of this reason. And it's okay. So what I'm going to do for this, if I've got everything set up right, after I share the story, a bit of what happened with Chris, I plan to do the slideshow, in which I'm going to invite you to watch with me. And then I'm also going to have my camera on, in which you get to see my reactions for the very first time watching these pictures. And do I know what's going to happen with it? Nope. I guess that's going to be the interesting thing. I might fully break down and sob. I have no idea. What I would like to is, if you have questions, go ahead and post them up in the comments. If I can, I will go ahead and get to them during this live feed. If not, I definitely, when this is over, will go back and answer in each and every question. Then I'll post up those answers for you guys. So where does one begin other than the beginning? Well, my son. So for those that don't know, my son, Christopher Byron Allen, he would have been 26 this coming November 1st. And he actually shared a birthday with my cousin Mandy. And Chris, I got the blessing of being able to raise Chris a majority of his life on my own. He was a child from my first marriage that actually lawn darted. And not raising him, the first marriage lawn darted. So just want to make that clear. And thanks to the loving support and help from my parents, who were alive at the time, really played an integral part in getting everything together for me to raise Chris on my own. And back in the late 90s, I actually won full custody. I don't like that one. I was awarded full custody. There you go. It wasn't about winning or losing. I was awarded full custody. And Chris, he was my bright blonde hair, fire blue eyes, one of the gorgeous kids I've ever seen. And my God, was that hard being a single parent. I had just gotten out of the Army after 7.5, 8 years, and man, single parenthood sucks, but it also has its rewards. And it was hard. Chris struggled really hard much of his life, that his biological mom and I didn't stay together. And that really set some things in motion, I believe, very much at the DNA level, to where he struggled with it his entire life. Now, Chris, at 16 years old, joined Job Corps and was there for almost a year. And then just after his 17th birthday, he actually signed up and joined the Army as a combat engineer. And he did a couple years in that. And although certain areas of it he thrived, he still was searching for something. He was still searching for connection. I did as best as I could as a parent, but I struggled with PTSD at the time, super, super hard, and which made raising Chris even that much harder because in some ways I wasn't able to be fully present for him in the way in which he needed. Um, and that showed over years. He and I had a two-way type of relationship. It was very Gemini, where one minute it was fantastic, great, I love you, Dad, love you, son, bro hugs, and all that. And then there was other times it was, oh my, oh my, these gray hair, 90% of these are from him. I'm just saying. But he at times would just tell me, piss off, F off, whatever, Dad, I never want to talk to you again. And then a couple months later, he'd reset and come back. Because one of the most important things for me as Chris's dad was ensuring that I was always that foundation, that grounding rock, that no matter what would happen in his life, he could come to me, no matter what, even with, his stepmom, my wife, Nikki, we've been together, 15 and a half years. He knew that no matter what, all judgment aside, all BS aside, he knew he could come and talk to me. Hell, he could just occupy same space and it would be okay. This past couple of years had been really, really difficult because he really struggled once he got out of the military, more so than ever in life. And he made one bad decision after another, and that was okay. I never judged for it, no matter what it was. I was like, it's okay, son. If you need me, I'm here. Let's talk. And there were a couple times in which he called. I get the message, Dad, I need you to pick up the phone. Okay. What's up, buddy? And he would tell me what was going on. And I finally hit a point where, as a parent, we do this for our kids. I saw the path in which he was going, and I'm like, no, not today. Not today. And I threw him the lifeline, and I said, hey, I want you to stop what you're doing, drop everything. I want you to get a plane, train, automobile, whatever you've got to do, come home. I want you to come home. I got you. And he struggled with it. I heard his voice break, and he goes, okay. 24 hours later, and after a long-ass train ride, I picked him up at the train station. And it took everything in me not to react to what I saw. At the time, he had gotten into drugs. He was pretty much into alcohol. But he had just beat the crap out of himself. And I didn't care about the shell, what I saw. What I cared about was the beautiful boy, the beautiful young man that was on the other side of that shell. And so I gave him the biggest hug ever and said, let's go do this. And jumped in the car, and I kept everything light. Really, really kept the conversation light. And we got home. I fed him. My wife already had his bed made for him. And that's when the healing process for him went on. And we were able to help get him clean. And by help, meaning support. He had to do the work. But what we did was lay out pretty much all the resources he needed and the love and support from us as his family so he could have the win, and he did. He just came out the other end so fantastic, and you can see it in his eyes. One of the things, whenever he was struggling or very hurt, I can't explain it other than his eyes would dim. He had these most beautiful blue eyes, and you'll see them here in just a bit. These beautiful, beautiful blue, fire blue eyes. They were just piercing. But when he was hurting the most, they dimmed to an almost sapphire. And it was amazing to see that transition happen to where they came back. The light in his eyes came back. And so he did his stint here. Good days, bad days, everything in between. It was okay. And off he went to do his life again. And he ended up in Texas. We helped him one other time after that for a very, very short time. But he ended up in Texas. My heart's in Texas, Dad. And I was like, okay, great food. Great food. So I was like, yay, go where your heart calls you. And so things were going fantastically well, relationship-wise, for us, but he still struggled, and he did not know how to pull himself out. Now, what I mean by struggle is he wasn't struggling with the drugs or alcohol anymore. He was just struggling in general. He never, they talk about a square peg in a round hole. Chris was multifaceted, so it was like a hexagon, and it just wasn't going to fit. But it was a choice. It was a choice. He really wanted to do things his way, and in some ways prove the world wrong. And it's okay. It was okay that he did that. Well, those that do know me, I have two additional kiddos, 5 and almost 7 years old, and my daughter and my little son are just as challenging as he was, but I see through wiser lenses, all four of them, with these two. And on March 13th, Friday the 13th, I had to go pick up my son Vinny from school. He's 5 years old. Picked him up from school. It was at 2:30, and I just pick him up, and we're walking to the car, and then the phone rang. But it came from a number. It was like weird. It was all sorts of numbers and characters that made no sense. And normally, I just hit decline. Something that day, told me to answer. And that's when I got the call that no parent ever wants. When I answered the phone, it was a young woman. She was not comfortable in the call whatsoever. But she sat there and said, "Is this Mr. Allen?" I said, "Yeah, how may I help you?" She said, "This is Detective Reinhardt from Killeen Police Department in Texas." Now, when I heard that, the very first thing in my mind is, okay, did he do something wrong? Is he in jail? What do I need to do to help? What happened instead was she said, "Mr. Allen, I'm sorry to inform you, but we found your son dead this morning." In a nanosecond, my legs gave out from under me. It was like a vacuum. Sound, light, nothing existed. And I hit the ground. And I remember having my hands down the ground. My forehead was touching the ground, and I was just there. I could smell I could smell the fresh earlier rain that we had on the cement. And it felt like an absolute eternity in that moment. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. And the detective was quiet. This is very key. My hat's off to them. They knew not to say any sort of comments. Because what can you say when you just told somebody that their kid has died? Then I started hearing the voice, Daddy, Daddy. My mind at that moment was Chris. When my marbles started to semi come back, that voice I was hearing saying Daddy, Daddy wasn't the hopeful psychosis of a instantly grieving dad, but it was the voice of my little boy Vinny. See, Vinny was 5, 6 feet next to me. We were walking to the car. I'm glad no sound came out. I'm glad that did not continue the conversation at that moment with the detective. What I ended up doing was getting my composure. I sat up just a little bit. Vinny comes over and he puts his arm on me and he's like, Daddy, are you okay? Are you okay? What happened? What do you answer to that? No, I wasn't okay. Not in the slightest. But what I said to him was super important at that moment. I said, it will be okay. It'll be okay, big guy. Come on, we got to get to the car. Now, the detective is listening to this on the phone. I tell Vinny, hey, I just unlocked the car. Boop, boop. Go get in your seat, and I'll be there in just a sec, okay? Okay, Daddy gives me a big hug, runs. Off he goes, happy as can be, and oblivious to what was happening. I jump back on the phone and I tell the detective, listen, I cannot talk at this exact moment. I have a 5-year-old that cannot be exposed to this right at this moment. Is this, can you have my phone number? Can you text me your number and let me call you right back? She said, yes, Mr. Allen, I understand. Bloop. Click. Walk to the car, get in. He's asking me, Daddy, you sure you're okay? Yeah, not a problem, buddy. We got this. Okay. I turn the ignition on, adjust the mirror, and I see him, and he's looking. I said, what's up, buddy? Daddy, did Big Brother Chris die? How in the living hell did he know? My 5-year-old who didn't hear a damn thing. Something inside him knew that his big brother was gone. Well, you let the cat out of the bag with that, so I wasn't going to lie to him. I said, yeah, buddy, I just found out. It's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Immediately as I start to drive us home, I knew what I had to do is I had to let my wife know who was at her job. And I pick up the phone instead of, I wasn't, just so we're clear, I was not going to call her and say, oh, by the way. I called a very close friend of mine, Webby, and I said, hey, this is what's happened. Do I tell Nick right now or do I wait? And he goes, well, why do you need to wait? Because March 13th was also my wife's 41st birthday. What a present to have to give to a mom and a stepmom who loved him Absolutely immensely. What do you say to her? Happy birthday, our son's gone. Webby said, you know what you need to do. You have to tell her you cannot wait. She'll get through this with her birthday, but this is paramount that you share this with her. And it's like, okay. So I hung up. Immediately called another very, very close friend, the godmother of our kids, Sharon. And I said, and she's like, what's up? And I said, I don't need to give you any details right now. I need you to stop what you're doing. I don't care if you're working. I don't care if you're at home. Please stop whatever it is you're doing. Meet me at the house. I need you to watch the kids. I have something important to deal with. The thing I love about my friends, no matter where they are on the globe, we do that for each other. And she did. She dropped what she was doing and she showed up to my house. And it literally was just one motion. I said, the kids are in the house. I will talk to you later. She says, what's wrong? I'll tell you later. And I closed the door behind me, and my wife literally works not even 3 minutes from the house. And I messaged her. I said, I'm inbound. You're taking lunch early. So I walk into her work, and I laugh because this is quintessentially us. She's in her office. I'm struggling. I'm trying to contain myself at that moment. Um, I walk into her office and she goes, oh, hey, did you bring me chocolate? The reason why that's funny is because I do that for my wife. There's times I'll just randomly show up to her work with some flowers or chocolate or a treat, or I'll make her lunch or something. So it was not out of the norm for me to just say, hey, I'm coming in, we're going to do, you're taking lunch early, and there'll be some sort of a surprise. But I was unraveling. I was unraveling at the seams. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know if I could tell you because it's your birthday. She goes, you need to tell me. I said, sweetheart, Chris has died. They found him this morning. She, needless to say, as gracious of a woman as my wife is, just got an anvil dropped on her birthday. But all she cared about at that moment was how I was doing. She asked me if I wanted a hug. My God, no. Not at that moment. There was just no way. I needed just a minute or so. And then I was like, yeah, I'm ready. Well, at that moment, you have two parents, two surviving parents of adult child suicide, having to come to grips with what was just delivered to us. And on the drive home, I stopped being Chris's dad and I went back into military mode. I had to figure this out. I know what the detective told me, but I had to make sense of this. And so right away, I got the opportunity to call the detective. The detective answered right away. She was on standby, which was phenomenal, and I know how busy they can be, but she made time for me. And I was in absolute military mode, and I had to push the feelings. I had to push the grieving aside because it wasn't time. At least this is what I was telling myself. It wasn't time to grieve my son's death. I said, what happened? Well, we found him in his apartment this morning. They did a wellness check and they found him in his room. He had hanged himself. I'm like, bullshit. Not my kid. Not happening. There's the denial. It didn't happen that way. There's no way. Anybody that knew my son knew that that wasn't an option. And if it was, it wouldn't have been that way. And so right away I start going through the conversation with the detective, and she's like, we're still looking into it. So you're damn right you're looking into it. And after, I think we were on the phone 45 minutes, when it was done, afterburners went on. I'm going through all the text messages, the voice messages. I'm going through everything, all three of my son's Facebook accounts. I'm going through, and see, the reason why I was super struggling with this was not just because of the loss of my son. They found him on the 13th. They said he had been there for at least 4 days. I last talked to my son through an entire day on the 8th, just a few days prior. I looked at all our text messages. We're joking, we're playing. It was video chat, texting, just the whole 9 yards. And he was just being Chris. He was just, Dad, look at my, look at my abs. I haven't been built like this since I was in the Army. It was just things. It was playful. It was disarming. But that means he died late that night or the next morning. That's why I ran through everything. I was like, he couldn't have done this. He gave no signs, and I pride myself on being hyper aware of situations and people around me and what's going on. The empath side of me, it has been pinging for decades. But I had to go through this process for myself the way my mind and my body needed to. So I looked through and I went through the messages. I went through the messages for the past 3 to 4 years. And I found motive, means, and opportunity for 4 people. Instantly in my head, I got this locked in. I immediately called the detective. The detective was floored at the amount of evidence that I was able to bring. She sets up a Dropbox, and I just flooded everything I could. All the proof that it was not my son that did this to him. It had to be somebody else. After I finished giving that info to the detective, I start making the rounds of calls. And one of them, my buddy Mike Zabkar, Mikey, as close as a brother as I can have, and I have just a handful of them. He's one. I immediately tell him what's going on, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm getting on a plane now." What? No, I don't need you on a plane right now. I need a day or two to process this. And Mikey just says, "Okay, you sure?" "Yes, I'm positive." Okay. And we finish our call and let it go. Now see, Mikey knows me. The reason why Mikey was willing to jump on an airplane at that moment was because, not just because he wanted to be there for support of me and of my wife, but he knew this was the one thing that would get me to question my own existence. And in true fashion, Mikey ignored what I said, immediately messaged my wife, and said, "Hey, don't tell him, but I'm inbound. I'm getting a ticket." Ah, infuriating, but with absolute love. The next morning, Mikey, I pick him up from Seattle Airport, and I didn't know whether to sock him in the throat or hug him. Luckily, I took the latter and hugged him. And he spent 3 days, 3 or 4 days here. And this was all at the start of this whole quarantine debacle that's happening. So there's a lot to take in. To say that I was overstimulated or in stimulation overload was an absolute understatement. So, but Mikey held space for me. And what was amazing is he listened. He let me be in the grief no matter what it looked like. And I was sharing with him, dude, I got 4 people nailed. Let's screw the electric chair. I want an electric bench. Put them all, they can all hold hands, flip the switch, and off they go. He let that sink in for a little bit. He listened to me. He was very brilliant at his holding space for me. And then he asked me a question. And I resented him for this question. Resented something fierce. He said, when all is said and done with this, if they find out it wasn't anybody else, and it truly was him taking his own life, are you going to be okay with that answer? Initially, it was like, yeah, sure, but that's not the answer. Now, look, I've got it's, and the more I looked, I kept on putting a story on top of a story on top of a story of what happened to my son, what played out. I talked to his property managers, I re-talked to the detective, I talked to some of his friends, and it was all building this story that I didn't want, but yet I did. I didn't want it to be my own son choosing to take his own life. Well, after a few weeks, the detective called me back and said, we're looking at the last few things. I can't give you any details right now, but the judge has decided to hold your son's body. What? No. I need my kid. I need to bring my kid home. They said we're doing a in-depth autopsy. I realized how fast they rushed him to autopsy, actually, but they were going through the autopsy report. They were trying to find foul play for me because they said the instrumental evidence that I was able to cause them to have to look at this as something other than suicide. Then, after a few more days or such, the judge got the final autopsy report confirming he had hanged himself and released his body. Now, our mortuary service in Sequim, Lindy Price, was phenomenal in facilitating everything for me. I knew that I needed to get my son home for nothing else but for me. And so the funeral home in Texas went ahead and took care of the cremation, took care of the paperwork, the death certificates, and sent my son home. Which that was unnerving a bit in itself. How does you mail somebody home? That just, because I was given two options. Let me get back here for a sec. I was given two options. I could have him cremated or I can have his body sent home, but they said the condition in which his body was in would not be best for a parent or anybody for that matter. And so we opted to go with the cremation. And that was hard for me because when I gave that permission for them to cremate his body, that was the final, whatever you want to call it, that I was never going to see my son's fiery blue eyes. I wasn't going to hear, I love you, Papa, or I love you, Daddy. I love you, Dad. You're an asshole. Whatever he chose to want to say to me at that moment. A couple more weeks go by, and I get the call from the funeral service here, Lenny Price, and they say, your son has arrived. He's ready for pickup. And I go with my wife, and they hand me a box. Now, as they were walking up to me, when I saw the box, that didn't affect me. There was a disassociation that that was my son. It wasn't until I signed the paperwork, paid the money, which I'll get into another video somewhere about end-of-life expenses, which are ridiculous. But as the very wonderful funeral director came up to me, she handed me my son. See, when my son was born, he was born premature, almost 3 months. He was 1 pound, 14 ounces. The first time I got to hold him after they popped him in the oven, the incubator to finish cooking. He was a little over 5 pounds when I got to actually hold him. When the funeral director handed me Chris's box, it was about the same size and same weight as my son when he was born and when I got to hold him. That is something that will never go away. And he's being laid to rest with both my mom and my dad. One day I'll get to be laid to rest with them. So for now, we'll be a family together again on the other side. Then was taking care of the last bit of paperwork and such, and holding the birth certificate and death certificate of your child is also very unnerving. I had done a Facebook Live during that period of time when I was seriously struggling with the grief and the emotion. And right after that video, it's like day 10 after he passed, I went ahead and was sitting in our bedroom. I was sitting on the bed. I was just sitting there with my hands on my head thinking about my son. And I kept on saying, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Not my boy. And I swear to you, I swore I could see him and feel him sitting right next to me. He was as real to me as I am as real to myself right now and all of you. And I remember hearing in my head him asking me the question, Dad, what are some of the things you taught me? What are some of the things you taught me? My screwed up humor was, well, at times I taught you how to be an asshole. And the retort back from that was him looking at me. Again, this is in my mind's eye. Well, at least that's one skill I mastered, but what else? And it brought a little bit of levity to my heart that was desperately needed. And I was like, I don't know how I can do this. I don't know how I can go on. I remember him putting his arm around me, walking through my door, out the hallway. Him with his arm around me, him pointing. It's like, Dad, there. That's why you have to. That's why you have to get through this. And I'm like, and I saw it. It's my wife. My two little kids were sitting on the couch. And I said, that is why you have to do it. Because you have to be there for them, Dad, like you were for me. I remember turning. Saying, I love you, son. I said, I love you too, Dad. And he says, I'll see you again. Just not today. And in my mind's eye, I gave him the biggest hug. Kissed him on his head like I did when he was little. And I turned and faced the day with my wife and my two little kids. That was the moment. That was the moment I needed. Excuse me. That was the moment I needed. That permission. What a gift he gave me. He gave me permission to grieve. In all phases of it. Yeah, that was beautiful. So what did the grieving process look like for me? First off, I held space. I allowed myself. I no longer needed to control anything around me. I had the end of the story. I had that outcome. But now what was important was my outcome through all this. So I took time to not only allow myself to grieve, but equally as important, I was able to hold space and give that same permission for my family, my wife, and our two kids. Because how often do we, during a grieving process, loss of a loved one, that we forget to include everyone, family, friends, the kiddos. And we were able to hold space for each other and allow the anger, allow the hurt, the denial, the negotiation to try and bring him back, all of it. And then I started doing some internal work for myself. As a certified hypnotherapist, I went ahead and did some internal work for myself over a 24 to 48 hour period. I journaled, I meditated, I prayed. And each time, each moment, each passing second that I did that, life began to pick back up. For me, it was like a bridge. I share this with my wife. It's a bridge with blinders on that I'm just looking down and I'm just taking one step at a time. And I can't see, everything else is black around me except for the one step in front of me. And as I was doing that internal work and not blocking myself from feeling, I would see another step a little brighter, and that picture would open up more and more and more and more and more, letting in the colors, and just an overwhelming color fest of colors, sounds. And then I just remember closing my eyes, breathing in, breathing out. Made it to the other side of that bridge. Now, will all the splinters of my heart, can they be put back whole like they were before this happened? No. Does it mean because I've gone through the grieving process that I'm not going to feel? No, I'm going to feel more. And that's amazing. That I get to feel more. I get to experience my son in a way that I never thought was even possible when he was alive. It's like those Japanese bowls that get broke. A lot of times we see a broken bowl or a broken plate and we throw it away. And I believe it's Japan that they take the bowl, or take the broken dish, and they remend it with strands of gold. So the cracks are now filled with gold. And it becomes something extraordinary, something better than what it originally was. Those memories, those thoughts, those feelings are now laden with gold. And I feel exceedingly blessed for it. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I want to share two more things with you. The first, I want to share a photo slideshow of my son through his life. And then I'm going to bring this to a close. And then the very last thing, I want you to stay at the end. The very last thing I want to share with you. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but everything is telling me that I need to. I'm going to share with you the very last text message my son and I had together. And so, thank you to each and every one of you for coming in and spending your time with me, allowing me to share with you the story of my son, to go through the grieving process and come to a point of acceptance. And I send each and every one of you, no matter where you are in the world, absolute love. And I'm in the hopes that my journey through this process helps those of you that are still struggling. Know that you're not alone. You can reach out at any time. And it's okay to breathe. It's okay to exist. It's okay to hold the space for yourself. And so with this, as I go into this video slide, let this moment, this message, be my son's last act of service to us all. That the end of one life and the end of one story doesn't have to be the end of yours. I'm going to pop on this video. I hope you enjoy it. You're going to see me on camera watching it right along with you. Thanks, everyone. Loved airplanes. He just got in his braces. There's family. He tried to learn how to cook like me. I love it. You grow up so quick. The two brothers. Handsome kiddo. Boy with the fire blue eyes. Boy was yoked. Whoop. I can't thank you all enough. Thank you for being with me.